Okay, it looks like everyone, most people are here, so we'll go ahead and get started. First off, thank everyone for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day to go over this. I think it's extremely important to understand about this topic. I know it's sort of taking over every single conversation that we've had. So I just wanted to make sure that we're prepared, especially as the US cases are going up. And that's the whole purpose of this webinar. So coronavirus, in 2020, worker safety and how to plan for business continuity in your operations. Let's get started. All right. Before we begin, I just want to introduce ourselves. My name is Arjun Patel. I'm the CEO here at WorkClout. I've had experience working in manufacturing for more than 15 years, watching my dad grow his manufacturing company and also as a management consultant. And then my other partner in crime is Brian Trang. He's the Chief Product Officer. You probably saw his beautiful face on the home screen. He's had experience working with Tesla and Genentech. So we've come from a background of working with manufacturers and industrial sectors, understanding more about like continuous improvement and business continuity as a whole. A little bit about WorkClout, what we do. We're performance support software. So we're software that helps your operators perform to the best of their ability through performance tracking, task, on-the-job work instruction, skills training. We're rated #1 manufacturing software by Gartner, Capterra, and Software Advice, and we hope to continue that trend. Okay, let's get started for what we're all here to see today. Also, feel free, you don't have to take notes on any of this. I'm going to send the deck after this call, so you guys will have it and you guys will share this your things. And we're also going to be sharing some other things that you guys can send out to your organization and review after the call as well. And feel free to ask any questions through the webinar. Brian, he's going to be answering as many questions as possible. So if you have any questions throughout this whole entire time, feel free to ask them and then he'll make sure to answer them as we go. Okay. So the agenda for today is, first, we're going to understand the situation we're in. I know it's monopolized every single conversation we've had, but we want to make sure that we're being able to prepare for the worst and understand the threat as it continues to spread. Next, we're going to implement what we call a CHI strategy, basically immediate actions you could take immediately. And the third thing that we're going to discuss is a plan for business continuity. And then we'll wrap it up with live Q&A. That I'll unmute everyone at the end and everyone can discuss what strategy is working for them and what's not working for them. All right, let's get started. All right, the current situation. So the cases globally right now have proliferated. It's truly a global pandemic. There's around 338 cases based off last night, but I just looked at the numbers today, and there are around 350 cases with over 15,000 fatalities. But I think what we're more concerned about is the cases domestically. I know most of us are probably in North America, US and Canada mainly on this call. Right now, it exponentially grew from just a handful of cases to over 35,000 in a matter of a few weeks. And that is something that is concerning, and that's why we're here preparing for the immediate threat on our business. We already have shutdowns in California and New York and Washington, and I assume that if this continues to spread, we're going to have shutdowns everywhere. So we have to make sure that we are understanding of what we're preparing for. If you want to monitor updates on the situation, we have resources that I'll send afterwards, but basically it's important to monitor updates so you know if there's going to be a shutdown or not, depending on your location, and so you know how to communicate to your organization as well. One thing that this has led to is an economic crisis. There's a thing called exogenous shock, basically one thing that caused a recession. And in this case, it's a pandemic, it's coronavirus. It's crazy how one small little bug has created such a huge impact in our daily lives globally. And we're in a time where everyone is feeling the same anxiety, feeling the same fears, and feeling the immediate threat at hand. And in a way, there's a silver lining to all this. We're all a community. We're all understanding like each other, and we're all sharing what we know with each other, which is also pretty nice because now we have a community to relate to. You know, everyone is on the same page for the first time in a long time. So because there's this exogenous shock, we're in this global recession and we're trying to survive and trying to make sure that we're using our resources to the best of our ability. But unlike other traditional disasters, we actually know what the threat is and when it's likely to hit us. You know, right now it hit the US pretty hard, and it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better. So what we have to do is prepare right now and not panic. So because of this recession is caused by people not going to their jobs, not being able to meet in person, a lot of these industries are going to be impacted: manufacturing, services, retail, wholesale, because raw materials are not going to be available. So you have to figure out where is the best way to diversify where you're getting your raw materials. Quarantine affecting people from traveling or meeting can cause a customer recession, so you're not going to get as many orders depending on what industries you're serving. So if you're in food and beverage, you're cherry right now. You're getting orders, but I think the biggest thing is absenteeism. How will you be able to operate if there's employees not showing up to work or employees being infected? So I think that's like the biggest thing that we're really thinking about when we're discussing about coronavirus. All right, so the next topic on our agenda is taking immediate action. So this is before you even plan for business continuity. This is just immediate actions you could take today, right after this call, using the CHI strategy that we're talking about. So it's about communication, coordination, hygiene, and isolation. These are essentially things that you could, right after this call, go and implement within your own operations, and it'll be really easy to do so as well. So let's start with communication. So the most important thing, like your employees right now are probably somewhat confused on the situation. You know, are they going to show up to work? Is the business going to be open or closed? So what you have to do is really promote that sense of calmness through communication. So we recommend having like some sort of living digital form, or maybe an email thread that people could ask questions and you can respond really easily, and also share information of like what the status is of your organization. And this also helps your suppliers and contractors who are working with you, because they want to know, you know, like, am I still supplying it? Am I still contracted by you, even though this whole thing's happening? So having some sort of communication thread about this particular topic is of utmost importance right now. Some tools you could use WorkClout. We have forms. This is just a shameless plug that we have, but we have forms, and a lot of customers are using us in this way to be updated with not just like the management team, but also the operating team, the people on the floor, the people in the field. They want to be able to be informed as well, and this is a quick and easy way to do so. Or you could even just rely on email. So you could have a giant email thread of like questions and making sure that you're seeing the right people, or have some sort of email information that they could email, or even a phone number to call. You know, if they are worried about their job, if they're worried about what the situation is, you want to be able to communicate that. Second step is coordination. You know, most things happen, there's a lot of bureaucracy when you have to make certain decisions, and information sharing could also happen really slowly. So you have to change that in this time of need. Give decision-making power to team leads, you know, and the best way to make sure that they're making the right decision is to review safety policies, quality policies, any type of policies you have, making sure that you double down on them and really understand what their what the policy is, depending on situations. And you have to make it situational too, right? You know, if this happens, then you should be doing this. So I would give that autonomy to team leads so they can react quickly. And you also want your workforce to react quickly too, because if, let's say, if there's some sort of outbreak you want to make sure that people respond in seconds, not minutes, not hours. You want them to respond right away, so you know how to adjust based on that. Some tools you can use with this is, again, WorkClout has task assignments, and then also if you want it to be even more immediate, then you could have straight video calling, or just a phone call. That's why I say, like, give autonomy to your team leads, because you don't have to assign certain tasks to everyone. You could assign tasks to a team lead where they could quickly react to that as well. Hygiene. I think everyone has probably heard wash your hands like a million times by now, but here I'm saying it the millionth and one time. It's often overlooked, and I think hygiene is really important at this specific thing. And one thing to do is have sanitation stations at every work center. Maybe some hand sanitizers, a place where they can wash their hands really quickly before and after their jobs, before they're going to work, before they eat. Having break rooms that making sure that there's like promotional material across. Like, for instance, we've been making some promotion material to print out and distribute to people's orgs. So it's almost like Kanban style, where it's just in your face everywhere, and everyone understands what to do and when to do it. And they have certain procedures on, like, what's the right way to wash your hands. You could have that posted up in a bathroom or at a sanitation station. What you really want to do is enforce these hygiene-specific safety checklists to make sure people are being hygienic and not breaking rules, because it's of utmost importance to prevent an outbreak from actually happening. So the last thing in the CHI framework that we came up with is isolation. So if there is an outbreak, you want to be able to isolate it as quickly as possible. So if people are displaying symptoms, so the common symptoms of coronavirus right now are like fever, cough, shortness of breath. If they're sneezing, that's probably not coronavirus for the most part. It's not really common, it's very rare. But if they have a certain temperature, you want to be able to check that at the beginning of each shift. So if the temperature is above the 96 degrees, 98.6 degrees of normal human temperature, you should just send them home immediately. One of the biggest things is, like, people just think they could come to work because they feel good, but their temperature might be increasing, so it seems like they have more symptoms, essentially. Another thing that you can do is contact tracing. What contact tracing is, it detects and traces people who are sick, and also understands where they've been in your warehouse or your factory, and also who they've interacted with. And it's using camera and sensor data. And we have this available with a partnership that we've had with Enoki. So whenever if you want this, it's called ACT, automated contact tracing. I'll discuss more about that in the next slide. But basically, this is the best way to do it if an outbreak does happen. Because you want to isolate the people who have the sickness, and also understand who they connected with, so you quarantine all those people. Another tip that we've been giving a lot of manufacturers in terms of isolation is staggering your shifts. So for instance, we had a manufacturer we were working with. They had 100 people on the floor at one time. Well, we told them, like, you have to split your shift in half, so 50, and stagger the workload. I know it's going to be pretty tough, but that's the best way to mitigate the risk of an outbreak. Because if one person gets sick, they can infect 3 other people, and that person can infect another 3 other people, and it just extrapolates more and more as more people get sick. So it's really important to isolate people who've been sick, and if they interact with certain people who have been sick, no matter who that employee is. All right, so the tool I use is called Enoki. We have an exclusive partnership with them. So they've developed sensors and cameras specifically for factories and warehouses using WorkClout. So you could understand who's gotten sick through camera technology. And if you have any questions on that, feel free to put it in the question inbox. We could go over it in more detail too. And then I would invest in these infrared laser thermometers. You could get it from Harbor. I'll send you a link, but you could get it from Harbor Factory Tools. Basically, it's only $17, and usually it would have been illegal to check your temperatures from your employees before their shift. but the EOCC has made it legal since March 17th to allow this for happen, to check temperatures at the beginning of each shift. And that's like one of the best ways to prevent an outbreak, because you know who's sick, and if they are sick, send them home immediately. Okay, cool. Now we're in the final part of the presentation before we get into Q&A, planning for business continuity. I think that's what you guys are all here for, and this is what I'm here to discuss. All right, so there's essentially three things. I mentioned it earlier in the slide in the presentation that you have to really understand of what's going to affect your organization. One, I think, is the most important one. It's employee absenteeism. CNN, they had a projection that 40% of the workforce is expected to be gone from your operations. So people are going to get sick, or people are going to be afraid to come to work. Also like key employees might not be available like they used to, right? So you have to figure out a concrete plan to adjust for that if you're going to continue operations. There's also some other downstream impacts. So for instance, like if you have multiple locations, one location might be closed down because of quarantine or because of outbreak happened in that specific area. So you're gonna have to, they're probably gonna send a lot of their work to other factories, and you might be that factory. So you have to figure out how you're gonna take on more workload with less people while preventing this pandemic as well. And then there's also a readjustment period coming back when the pandemic is over. You have to catch up to old business that you weren't able to get to. People have to get reacclimated to work. There might be an increase in hiring. So there's a whole set of downstream impacts that you have to think about as well. But I think the immediate thing is just focus on employee absenteeism, and then supply chain disruptions, the third one. Because of travel ban shipments from key countries, you're not going to be able to get the supply that you need. So you have to figure out a strategy to get your raw materials from different vendors at this moment. Okay, so what I did in terms of the slides is like I just asked like what specific questions you can ask, because everyone has their own continuity plan. But one thing you have to really think about is like, are you asking the right questions? So I put down a list of questions right here on how to mediate absent employees. How are your employee skills obtained today? If there's certain key elements that are essential to your operations, how are they trained? How are those skills like established? Is there a certain way you can cross-train in a short amount of time to replicate the knowledge of a key employee's knowledge base? And can you contact each employee through text or call, essentially, for a certain thing? What we've seen other people use is video-based instructions, or like quizzes and courses that make the cross-training time a lot less, what would you say, a lot less time intensive. So for instance, let me give you a scenario. Like there's 3 key operators that are the only ones that know a specific type of process because they have that tribal knowledge within them. How are you going to transfer that tribal knowledge in a quick amount of time, with a matter of days, not weeks or months? So if that person gets sick or if they can't come into work, you have 3 other people that know how to do that as well. So that's one thing that you have to really think about, is how do you cross-train your employees faster, and how do you transfer knowledge to them quicker? The next thing is it's how do you make sure your essential functions are running? I mentioned staggering your shifts, having less people on the floor at one time. With that comes trade-offs. So I categorized it into 3 different tiers. Tier 1 is essential functions that are critical to the top line financially. There's tier 2 that they do give some sort of financial contribution, but they're not part of the essential workflow. And there's tier 3, like things that aren't necessarily necessary right now. Are tier 3, like things that could probably be deprioritized. So when we're planning our business continuity with some of our customers, is we're just telling them like, okay, what's the thing that makes 80% of your business? Is it this one particular process in your manufacturing workflow, and how do you focus on that one critical element? And I would honestly, like, I put into tier 3s, but I would honestly focus all your resources into essential right now and get by focusing on that particular essential workflow rather than tier 2 or tier 3. All right, so basically for business continuity, it's about focusing on critical products or services that must be maintained, and then employee absenteeism. Those are the two things that you should focus 100% of your attention on to prepare. Everything else is just noise. It's just gonna waste your time. You need to focus on these two specific things in order for your operations to continue. With that said, this is the conclusion of my presentation, but I want to open it up to answers and questions from people and see if there's like a wider discussion of people's discussions, etc. So I'm going to unmute all mics, and if anyone has questions, feel free to ask it, and then anyone else could answer as well. So give me 1 second. All right, so the mic is up to anyone who wants to speak. Feel free to ask any questions.
Hey everyone, this is Brian here. I just want to add another quick note, just kind of like a quick tip for you guys. When you're announcing to your workforce that they're going to have to continue working and so forth, one really good tip that you can communicate to them is to work with the idea that they already have some sort of bug or virus, right? I found this pretty useful because even in my daily life, is when you feel like you have the virus, you'll start acting in a specific way. You'll start, touching your face less. You'll start washing your hands more, doing all those safety activities more so than you would if you acted like you didn't. So I think that's a really good way to kind of go about your workday and kind of implement as a mindset for your workforce.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Hey guys,
oh, go ahead.
This is JJ from DC Penner and Partners. Question for you guys, more of an actual discussion, a topic of discussion. Where do you guys see, in terms of a timeline on how or on where and when things are going to start looking better? There was a Harvard study that came out just recently, and their projections were 18 months. That's a pretty long time. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I was actually I think I saw a similar article, but yeah, they said you should expect for 18 to 24 months to prepare for this. So we're in this for the long haul, and I think that's like probably one of the most terrifying things is just like the time allowed. But I think I guess my thought on that is focus on essential businesses only and cut costs wherever necessary to be able to operate at maximum capacity. The reason why I think I'm not a medical professional or anything, but I think the reason why it's going to take 18 to 24 months is because by the time a vaccine's out and like trials are out, like it'll take a long time to distribute to everyone. But once the vaccine out, the time frame should actually decrease. But well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
One other question someone asked was how does contact tracing work? What technology are we using? So let me go back to that. So Enoki is a company. They were trying to be the Amazon Go of like retailers, where they get camera sensors and they know what you're talking about, what you're taking when you're going to a store. So you don't have to go through a cashier. You just pick up the item and they charge you for the card when you go out. But they repurposed that technology for manufacturing warehouse use cases just for the coronavirus. So they know who's entering the shop and who's leaving the shop, and when they're who they interact with using cameras and computer vision that they've developed in-house. And we just partner up with them to provide the service with WorkClout. So if you go with us, then you'll be able to get contract tracing as well. And that will really help isolate your point of failure faster than if you were to be like, oh, who do they interact with? Like, we'll give you a dashboard to show you exactly who they interact with and where they touch, so you know where to sanitize if necessary. That's a good question.
Yeah, hey guys. This is Martin Somarige from US Foods. I just have a quick question for you guys. So, you know, with the whole, CDC guidelines having to tell people to kind of have 50% of their workforce on site, and with the whole approach with social distancing, I've observed that a lot of the approach that most companies are using is they try as much as possible to allow those that have the capability to work from home not to be in the office, while limiting those that can work, that can do their work 100% in the office or on site to be on site, right? But with some of the fatality rate that we've seen with the coronavirus, it seems that people that are battling with existing ailments or older people with that do have conditions of being sick, they have ailments that they are battling with, the fatality rate for those folks are kind of more. So with that being said, instead of trying to separate your workforce from those that can work remotely at home, wouldn't it make sense to kind of give priority to those folks that are battling with ailment, or to older people to kind of be away from work at this point in time?
That is true. Like, instead of having split shifts and just like arbitrarily splitting your shift from 50% of your workforce, give the ability of like older people within your workforce to work from home and be isolated away from operations for the time being. I think that's actually an excellent approach, because those are the people most at risk, right? And like most younger people don't necessarily have like they could be in critical condition, but they won't be. It most likely won't be fatal. Is that where you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually a way better approach than how I was thinking of it. I think prioritizing the people that are more susceptible probably is the better way to separate your workforce. That's a good recommendation.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't want to waste too much of your time. I'm going to send you this deck afterwards, and if you have any questions in the meantime, you could feel free to email me or Brian any questions that you might have. We've currently been implementing, like I think we've done like 10 to 12 different business continuity implementations. So if you're interested, we're offering this as a free service to help orgs out during this crisis. Feel free to email either Brian or myself. I also send an email with my contact information and then resources as well after this call. Thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day, and hopefully this helps you in any way. Let's get through this together.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Thank you again, guys.
All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.